Kayla, you're clear.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Radio No Talkback for Fetus and the God, written by Ben Dudley and directed by No's very own Associate Artistic Director, Tamara Winters. Tonight we have the awesome cast and writer of the play. We have Ryan Chavez Richmond, who plays Fetus. We have Jared Erland, who plays God. We have Sean Meddy, who plays God's dad, Matthew. And
Hello,
we have
everybody,
Tess Talbot,
and
welcome
artist.
to the Radio No Talkback for Fetus and the God, written by Ben Dudley.
It sounds like we're
by
getting
No's
a
very own
weird
Associate
echo
Artistic
on
Director,
things, tech
Tamara
team.
Winters. Tonight we have the awesome... There we go. That was, I hope that was as confusing for everyone watching as it was for me. And finally, we have the writer of Fetus and the God, Ben Dudley. Ben, could you give us an elevator pitch for the show and kind of what inspired you to make this?
Yeah, sure. So basically the concept is that every single living being on Earth, in the split second before you're born, you meet God and you get to ask God 5 questions that only God can answer, and then you forget everything and you're born and you go on to life. And this has happened for billions of years, for trillions of organisms. And then in this play, one fetus arrives and kind of doesn't see the point if they're not going to remember everything when they're born. So they just kind of hang around and prod God and kind of annoy them, but also it helps God get to the bottom of some issues that they've been dealing with lately. And so, yeah, that's kind of the basic concept. And that's what always drew me to it is it's a simple concept. You know, you're in a big empty void that's infinitely large. You're with these 2 characters that are the complete opposite. I mean, God knows everything that could be known and has ever been known. and Fetus knows nothing. He's hearing every word for the first time, and he loves everything. So you got this jaded, know-it-all, and this completely wholesome Rube, and just watching them bounce off of each other in this, big, vast wasteland. I just feel like there's so much room there for experimentation, for comedy, for different things you can do. So I mean, that's kind of the reason why I started exploring this idea, and I have for so long, is it's just like you can talk a lot about humanity with these two polar opposites of humanity.
Awesome, that's great. And in what you were talking about, you said about watching them, which reminds me that this was originally a part of the very first serials. So what has changed in between, like the medium of stage to the medium of radio?
Sure. I mean, one of the good things about serials is it's so, like, you can't be very visual. You can't have a lot of effects or props or casts. So it really lended itself to this story because, you're in this weird world where whatever happens, anything could happen, and it all kind of makes sense in the context of this world. And I think that's why it works so well as a radio show, is because it's more about the relationship between these two people, and like the relatable points it makes about humanity and feeling fulfilled and art and things like that. I think just its simple but relatable nature makes it a good radio show. And it hasn't, it changed a fair amount since serials. My director, Leah Strasser, and I, on the way back from serials, we would always go through and be like, oh, that didn't get a laugh, or oh, that got a big reaction. So, it's definitely grown over the years as I've revised it and I stitched together into one show.
Awesome. That's great. One thing that I wondered about in the transition from the stage was the concept of using your imagination to build the space, like the car and the home. How did that change in the sense of, like, on stage you have 4 chairs, but in radio you just have the imagination of the audience?
Sure. Well, when you're on stage, you're kind of dealing with like it's a bit of a meta reference on stage, because everything is pantomime, and as much as I know, like, well, it's theater, you're supposed to go with it, he's pouring a coffee or whatever, but like in the back of my head in the audience, I'm like, you're just pretending. So I liked having that in there too, as like, yes, it's heaven or the afterlife or the pre-life, so anything could happen and a car is invisible, but really it's just us being like, okay, well, we can't exactly have a car on the stage, so yeah, they're invisible up here. that's basically it. It was just a fun way to poke fun at at how theater works, and I think it works a lot the same way in the radio play too. Just because you can't see anything, so we could say like, oh, oh, look, it's the Taj Mahal. I didn't know it's right across the street from the Eiffel Tower, and you can't say that that's not true. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that to you.
I can't say that it's not true. You're right. I think now this is our fantastic lead-in to our first audio sample. Tonight you're going to hear 5 different samples from the show. So if you haven't listened to the show already, hopefully this will entice you to want to watch it. So our first one is going to be explaining the concept of how the 5 questions work.
In this singular instant before your birth, you will
true.
receive an audience with God. You will ask God 5 supreme questions that only God can answer. After you've asked your 5 questions and God has answered them, you will be born, completely ignorant that that conversation ever took place.
Okay.
Just anything that's on your mind.
Okay, give me a second. I just learned about questions.
That's fine. I'm on my break, but that's fine. Instant before your birth,
Ooh,
you will receive.
How do I compare to most fetuses? Like appearance-wise.
Only God. To be honest, you're a little uglier than most, and God has answered them. You will be born, completely ignorant that that conversation ever took place.
Okay.
Just anything that's on your mind.
Okay, give me a second. I just learned about questions.
That's fine. I'm on my break, but that's fine. Instant before your birth,
Ooh,
you will receive.
how do I compare to most fetuses? Like
only God. To be honest, you're a little uglier than most, and God has answered them, you will be born, completely ignorant that that conversation ever took place.
Okay.
Hi, so tech team.
Just anything that's on your mind.
Stop sharing the
Okay,
sample.
give me a second. I just learned about questions.
We're getting the stream back. Now everything's
On
insane.
my break, in the singular instance before your birth, you will receive
How do I compare to most fetuses?
But only God, to be honest, you're a little uglier than most, and God has answered them. You will be born, completely ignorant that that conversation ever took place.
Okay.
Hi, so tech team.
Just anything that's on your mind.
Stop sharing the
Okay,
sample.
give me a second. I just learned about questions.
We're getting
That's
the
fine.
stream back. Now everything's insane.
On my break, in the singular instance before your birth,
How do I compare to most fetuses?
technical difficulties. Hi.
but only God, to be honest, you're a little uglier than most.
Hey, tech, can we cut everything besides us?
That conversation ever took place.
Okay.
Hi, so tech team.
Just
This is how we planned it. Stop sharing the
Okay,
sample.
give me a second.
Henry,
I
we
just
can
learned
hear
about
the. We're getting the stream. Now we can also hear the sample.
That's fine.
How do I compare to most fetuses?
Technical difficulties. Hi.
But only God, to be honest, you're a little uglier than most.
Hey, tech, can we cut Henry? We're still hearing the echo of the stream. Hi, so tech team. Okay. Okay, we're clear.
It's over.
I think it's over. Tess, you can come back now.
Colors are brighter. Flowers
Hi, gang.
smell better.
So obviously, with COVID-19 and everything like that, we are all adapting into a new world of tech, different from the ones that we all got our degrees in. So, yeah, so things like this are going to happen sometimes. And I'm just glad that we got it out here in the beginning, and we're going to try everything again. We're going to get back at it. The sample that we just listened to was explaining the 5 questions and the birth of fetus into God's world. So let's go ahead and start talking about that. So Jared, I was the editor for this, and so I got to listen to every scene multiple times. And you're pretty funny in this. And it's not exactly what most people would assume God to be like. So what was your process for preparing to play this version of God?
Yeah. It's really easy to kind of want to hold yourself back because you don't want to offend people, obviously. But I just kind of reminded myself that the title it's not the fetus in God, it's fetus in the God. So, he's just the God of this world, this universe, not necessarily the Judeo-Christian God that we all know. So kind of keeping that in mind kind of helped not to limit myself, and then it was just really with this character, just getting in touch with your most insecure artist side, just the really jaded old artist who's very insecure about his work.
Yes, because you're also not only the creator of Earth, you're also the creator of the hit comic Garfield.
Yes, so he's very proud.
So the next question is for Ryan Chavez. I've seen you play multiple roles now, like throughout Cincinnati, and obviously it's not often that you're asked to play a fetus. I was wondering, in what way is your approach different for when it comes to playing a comedy or a drama, if any?
Man, comedy is terrifying to me, and it's just very, very intimidating. So.
Oh, that's so strange because you're so funny.
I don't know, man. An acting teacher told me once because she had me do some comedy scene from like The Odd Couple or something, and I was having trouble with it, and she was like, in order to do comedy successfully, you have to think of it as like drama. So it's not funny to you. It's like very serious to you. And so that made it, I'm still terrified of it, but that made it a little easier for me.
Good. That's awesome. And you are really funny in this.
Yeah.
Like I said, the editor, so I had to listen to this the most out of everyone, I think.
Thank you.
Ben, I think we already asked about the significance of the 5 questions up top. You kind of went over it, so I want to pivot and ask, why did you include the creator of Garfield in as God's conduit to Earth? What was the inspiration?
Zach, that is a question that only God can answer. No, really, I don't have that great of a reason behind it beyond. I think Garfield is the perfect example for this because it's something that's like, it's an institution. It's been around 45 years, but it's been 43 and a half years since it was funny in any way. But it's still going along. Like, they're still making it. There's still a new one every day. You know, every 20 years, there's a bit more continuity added to it. But just the idea that, like, thinking of Jim Davis, this incredibly successful, maybe the most successful comic strip artist, and just like, how do you make a new one of those every day and feel great about your art? And I'm nothing against Jim Davis. Like, I wish I had a very successful comic strip, but the idea of like an artist who's like, I'm drawing 3 panels of this cat being not funny every day for the next half of a century. Just like, that made me think about that a lot. And then also I had like the first 2 Garfield compilations from the 70s when he looked really weird. Oh, yeah. I've always had those 2 around my house. So I don't know. I think it was just planted in my head that like a weird person made this and a weird person continued it for 40 years. And I just wanted to explore that, I guess.
That's awesome. Thanks, Ben. So the next sample that we're going to go into is what I've titled the Burrito Death. In this one, we'll get our introduction to characters played by Brianna Bernard and John Medley.
Once you unwrap them, there's a limited amount of time that they're still good. Come on, you have to eat the burrito.
What do I do? Just like push my teeth together?
It's getting cold. They don't reheat. Please, yes, push your teeth. Never mind. It went bad. You let it go bad. I won't let your first Taco Bell be anything less than perfect. I'll just toss it back in the hole. What the heck?
Oh my god! Someone dropped a burrito on this guy's head, and now he's dead!
Oh no.
Hey man, I didn't hear a thing. This did not happen.
So that's that sample, and I really love that sample for multiple reasons. And Sean, you play multiple characters in this, so what was your way of finding all the different voices? Because I think at the same strand you play about 3 different characters in about 2 minutes.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if I was going to be honest, I would draw back. For 5.5 years, I toured with a company where I was playing up to 12 different characters in an hour. So it was a touring puppet company. So it's one of those, playing multiple characters in a short period of time is not necessarily out of my stretch, especially if it's just doing voiceover. That's fantastic. It gives my hand a break. That came out weird.
You meant hand as in the hand of the puppet, yeah?
Yep. That is what I meant. Certainly is.
Did you? I hope you don't mind if I ask a question, Zachary. Is that all right?
Ben, you go ahead. Anyone can talk at any time.
Okay, great. Well, I was just wondering, Sean, like, if you did any sort of research for what it's like to get hit by a burrito from a great height, or or any kind of softish food.
I went. I tried. I would throw. I would try to throw a Taco Bell in the air, but my arm is not as high as the heavens.
So, and your hand was tired; it needed a rest. So.
Yeah, it needed a rest.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thank you.
That's good to know. All right, we're going to go on to our next sample of the evening, which I've entitled "The Parents." So this is the introduction of God's parents, Matthew, and I forgot what Brianna's name is.
Helen?
Ben, help me out. Helen. There we go. We're gonna hear it in just a minute. It's got to wake up first.
Mom, Dad, I brought a friend. I hope that's okay.
That's wonderful. I love that you're making friends.
Now you have two.
Do you ever call Prometheus?
He's not my friend, Ma.
A little boy on Earth discovered fire, and God used to go down there and play fireman
He
with them.
stole fire from me. I wasn't playing.
Have you and Prometheus kept in touch? You should call him.
I'm not gonna call him.
All you need to make a phone call is a finger in an ear.
That's deep.
I'm not calling him. I don't want to call him. He's a human. He died 130,000 years ago. I have nothing to say to him.
All you need to make a phone call is a finger and an ear.
Your dad is deep.
So, Sean, I'm going to throw another question over to you. Playing God's dad is probably strange and fun. You go through a lot of different emotions. You're kind of aloof. So what is it like to capture that same kind of comedic tone, but also go through some deep emotions?
It's amazing. No, no,
What's
I
your
think
mindset for the whole thing?
What's my mindset? Honestly, my mindset for playing God's father, I was trying to I was trying to bring forth like the classic TV dads that tried to instill a lesson, but were like maybe two-dimensional at best. Like Step by Step, the dad from that was a big inspiration for the role. So big that I don't remember his name. I don't remember the actor's name. He was
I'm
the
Patrick
dad.
Duffy, man. Patrick Duffy.
Oh, it was Patrick Duffy from Step by Step.
Thank you, Ryan Chavez, for the assist.
But yeah, I mean, that's I think the dads, it's he's trying to instill lessons, but he's over, like, in the end, I think the parents of God are just way more interested in themselves.
Most definitely. So Brianna Bernard was also going to be here with us tonight, but she had a last second chance to go see her family, which is obviously more important. So she is going to, we have an audio clip from her traveling. So she's answering the question, being connected to all of humanity's nightmares is kind of a strange concept and an interesting power for God's parents. What did you imagine through those sections, and were they humorous or were they hard to get through? And here's a clip.
During the nightmare parts, I pictured the stabbing almost like a cartoon flash video, like videos from the internet that you would watch in middle school. It is humorous, but to the point of, you see these things side by side. I don't know if the script is necessarily trying to comment on how, we're so used to violence, but that's kind of what I pictured in that, something so horrific and awful can coexist alongside our day-to-day.
And that's Brianna Bernard driving up I-70. So this is another question over to Ben. What was the inspiration for giving God's mom the power of being connected to everybody's nightmares in a same reality that they're seeing everyone else?
Well, so that idea came from, we've mentioned in some places, this was originally a comic strip I did in 2010. It's actually, in about a week, it'll be 10 years since I did the first one. It's kind of a fun coinciding thing. But it was the idea, I wanted everything to be so unfamiliar to Fetus. And I mean, everything would be, but I wanted Fetus as the reader's conduit as well. So I wanted there to be something that just made no sense, something that our minds couldn't wrap around. And so when you meet God's parents, it's already such a weird concept that they're just going to be beyond weird. In the comic strip, I drew them the father was just speed lines going in every direction, and the mom was a mythical beast that changed shape all the time. I just like the idea of okay, if we can't wrap our mind around the concept of God having parents, then we can't wrap our mind around their physical form or what they do. So, Fetus's mom sees, or God's mom sees every nightmare concurrently as they're happening on Earth. And Fetus's dad, or God's dad in the comic, every time a murderer on Earth died, they smacked into him at like 700 miles an hour and just became like a red mist. And that was his weird thing that didn't really make it into the play. But just this concept of just like, you can't possibly understand this world and these people, but it makes total sense to them. But you're just a fetus, you know, you don't know anything yet, but that's totally normal.
That's awesome. I love that. And so we're moving on to our next sample, which is the sample featuring the Holy Ghost, played by Malia Gramada. And she could not be here tonight either, but she sent in an answer to the question. So let's play the sample, and then we'll get into her question and answer. Coming up in just a few seconds.
She has a fun cursive name. Lots of loops.
Yeah, good point.
Tell her I said that. I'm just kidding.
So the question for sample 4 is your moment as the Holy Ghost, or renaming yourself as Axel, was probably the hardest that I left throughout the play. How do you feel about being the Holy Ghost? And since they consider themselves kind of a writer, did you base them off of anyone in your life? And so that's the question that's going to lead us into this next section here.
Siri, call 911.
I cannot do that right now.
What?
You're probably not going to believe me, but this is God speaking to you through Siri. Listen, if at all possible, try not to have a baby right now, okay?
What?
Maybe just try to hold it in for a while.
This is happening. This is happening. It's coming.
Maybe some Angry Birds would take your mind off of it.
Oh, shut up, Siri.
That was a really weird experience, and I think it's best if we didn't discuss the last 10 seconds ever again.
Okay, so that wasn't exactly what I queued up, but let's jump into the next section, which was queuing up the artist, played by Tess Talbot. And I think you probably have kind of like the biggest challenge of all, which is playing Jared Erland, but not Jared Erland. So how much of your time was spent listening to his mannerisms? And since you're playing two distinct versions of the same character, how did you go about making them separate?
So I fortunately have had the pleasure of working with Jared in other instances. So his like sort of tonal cadence was that he chose for God was not really a surprise to me. We did have in all of our rehearsals, you know, God speaks the most. So other than Fetus, God and Fetus speak the most. So a lot of time, like just listening to them, mostly when like Jared would get annoyed, like when God would get annoyed, like how he would, Jared's God is more like an undercut. Whereas like if me, Tess, was getting angry, I'd be like, ah, like a lot more intense. But I think Jared hit the tone much better. It's probably what Ben intended. So I had all this time to listen to Jared. And I guess like as far as making it separate, since I can't be Jared Erland, to try to follow Jared's speech pattern from what I'd heard earlier, when the artist does get possessed by God, but since I can't really change my voice much more, to follow Tammy's direction with vocal intention and energy, and where she wanted the vulnerability to come in, because I've got some juicy stuff at the end there. I sort of get God's arc, final, coming piece of arc, which Jared did all of the front work. So I get that like second part of that character. So that I guess gets to be a little bit more of my choice with Jared's cadence.
Yeah, definitely. And it all sounds really great. And I'm going to open up the floor to everyone asking questions. We're getting into the more community-based ones. So how was the process of making art during a pandemic? Was it a welcome distraction, or was it extra difficult with everything going on? And we can start wherever.
Yeah, I can start that one if you like. I know for me, it was an extremely difficult welcomed challenge. I know that like a lot of my theatrical experience has come from places where they don't have necessarily a lot of resources, and having to find that kind of creative energy of how do we make this work with what we have. And so it was honestly really refreshing to kind of feel that again and get to do that, where it's like, okay, what do I have? I have like this microphone that I bought like in college, and okay, the only room I can record in has kind of a high ceiling, so it's pinging. I'll just make like this blanket fort to help with the reverb, and yeah. So I
will say it was a pretty dope blanket fort.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, it's on Jared's Facebook. It's a pretty magical thing. Anybody else? How did you feel making art during the pandemic?
This was oh, sorry, Ben.
Sounds came out of your mouth first. You go.
This was very, very welcome because, Zach, as you know, I was so pumped to do Lasso of Truth at the No, and I was so excited about that. I looked forward to it for months, and when it got canceled, it was just like, never gonna work there. So it was so cool, and it was unexpected, and it was of course non-traditional, but it gave me kind of like that theater high anyway. I don't do drugs, so I gotta do theater. So
yay!
These days you can do both. It's incredible.
Don't limit yourself.
Home anyway.
I agree. It's really great to have this opportunity to make this, because I've had the script and been wanting to adapt it again and do more with it for so long. And obviously, like, there are challenges that come with doing it digitally and doing it remote and everything. Technical difficulties, or just like it not being quite the same as having the air in the room and everything. But it's still great. And I mean, for our purposes in recording audio and things like that, I mean, I think it's perfect.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very happy with how everything turned out. It sounds really nice. So realistically, how much of an inconvenience was it working digitally compared to working in person? Like, what things do you miss from being in the room with other people?
I personally think it's a lot easier, well, for me, to get distracted. And that was part of the challenge of this for me, is that I had to listen the entire time. Like, when you're in the room with someone in rehearsal, it's really obvious when you're not paying attention. So, but there's not, like, kind of like Ryan Chavez was saying, the like theater high of like going to rehearsal, like, oh, I have rehearsal, like, I'm gonna go make my art with a bunch of my friends, like in the same room, and then maybe we'll go out like for a drink later. Like we can't do that right now. So, I mean, I guess we could virtually drink together, but it's not, it's not the same.
The Fetus and the God digital happy hour.
Yeah. But I mean, it was harder for me to stay present all the time, especially when you can like mute your screen, when your microphone's muted, when your internet goes out, all that jazz. You don't have those problems in the room.
Yeah, like as a shy person, I love the distance this creates, but it also makes it a little harder too, because it's the immediacy of being in the room. Because sometimes you have to be like, oh, sorry, you go first, and that kind of stuff. And it's a little, you're a little less riding the physical energy of the room, I think. And yeah, it's a little easier to get distracted, but at the same time, I'll take what I can get right now.
Yeah, for sure. I know for me, it was tough just, dealing with the internet where sometimes you're trying to make those comedic beats with your scene partner and kind of, close the gaps, kind of pick up the beats. And, it's the internet, it might lag or their sound just goes out. I think there was like 1 or 2 recordings where we were just like sitting in silence for a second and realized, oh wait, the person did say their line, but for some reason Zoom didn't like give me their line. So yeah, that was definitely a challenge.
I'll second that as well. Brianna and my character, the mom and dad, have a lot of comedic bits that I think on stage would have been a lot easier to pull off, at least the initial timing of it. When you're doing it over a conference, it's kind of, you're reading the script, but then you have to, out of your peripheral, make sure that you're about to do it at the same time if you have a line at the same time. And that's that was unique. Otherwise, I mean, it was a fantastic time for me. I had fun.
Great. We actually, before we move on to the next round of all questions, it seems we have a question from the chat from Ben Dudley asking how many push-ups does Ben do in a day? And I think we need to get to the bottom of this before we move on.
Yes. Yep.
So please, Ben, let us know.
I specifically requested that you clear all questions with me first. This is something very personal and very spiritual to me. I don't know if this is 33. In
Nice.
Supersize Me, he said that an adult male should be able to do 33 push-ups, and I locked that fact into my brain and never forgot it. So I can do 33 push-ups and not one more.
What a weird number to pick. Why 33?
Well, it's exactly half of 66, but exactly twice 17.5. No, I have no good answer.
16.5. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I was testing you.
Jared Wilson proof. He knows math.
Yeah. But yes, thank you for the question.
You're welcome. So for I think pretty much everyone, if not mostly everyone, this was your first time doing DIY recording at home. So do you think the skills that you learned here are going to be helpful for you in the future projects, especially with we don't know when this is going to end?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the stuff I knew kind of in theory, like I was like, oh, I've used Audacity before, or like I've had to record some stuff, like 1 or 2 lines for something. But yeah, it's definitely a lot different recording a whole session or multiple sessions like this. So I think I've learned some skills that I can carry on.
I've implemented the knowledge I gained in this for my Fringe show coming out next week.
Ooh.
Immediately. So it's like quick turnaround.
Sean, what is the Fringe show that you're doing coming up? Let's do a little plug.
I am doing The Bassoonist. It's written and performed by me, Sean P. Meddy. It's in 1705, and it's based off the most famous fight in Baroque music history, where Bach got into a fight with a bassoonist.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Fun.
I can't wait to see it.
It was bound to happen sooner or later.
Yeah, I mean.
Did anybody feel was anything about the DIY system particularly challenging for anyone, and how did you overcome it? Unless everyone thought it was a cakewalk.
It was challenging for me because during the first round, I was staying with like friends, and there were like little kids in the house. So it was very challenging just to like find a quiet spot. You know what I'm saying? It was,
yeah.
But I also loved it this way because I often don't know what to do with my hands on stage. So this was like so chill, you know, just what else, you know.
While you were recording, I noticed you were going like this.
Exactly, man.
We had to give you some fake mics to hold in your hands. By the way, I found a picture from the original Fetus and the God, so that's the umbilical cord and God over there.
That's fantastic. I love that. Is the umbilical cord still in your closet behind you right now?
Oh yeah, for sure. Let me go grab that.
While he gets that, did anyone else find any challenges with the DIY system?
I had to come up with my own microphone stand. I'm very thankful that one was dropped off for me, but it didn't work with my microphone the way it was. So I had to come up with one with the camera tripod and some clamps. So that's an umbilical cord.
Yeah.
That is so weird.
It's like an old vacuum like cord or suction thing. Hose, thank you. Yeah, and wrapped it in like foam and cords and stuff. And in my dream production of Fetus and the God, we have one of these, but it's like twice as long and just like goopy and
it's would it leave like a residue on the stage as it went around?
That's why I've never done it before, but someday I'm gonna like own a theater and have just like the grossest play ever.
Audience members are like stepping over to get to
There's a splash zone up front.
Yeah. So it was in my trunk for about 4 years, and then it made its way inside. It's a beautiful story.
A true Cinderella story for the umbilical cord.
Play someday.
All right, so we are at the end of my questions for the evening. So I'm going to start wrapping things up unless anybody else has anything to say about the DIY system and how it worked for them.
I kind of have a question for the group. Yeah, that's right. I do.
Go. It's yours now. I'm gonna walk away.
Oh God. So I don't know about everyone else, but this was one of my first like extensive experiences with voiceover, and I was just kind of curious how you guys felt about the challenges of that, kind of adapting from traditionally stage or film like we've been doing to purely voiceover. Because I know there's a lot of things where I'm like, oh, I know how I would do this bit, and I'm like, oh wait, I can't like show the audience this, So what about you guys?
It definitely. What you mean? Oh wait, I guess you're talking more to the performers, right? How is it different as the writer? No, not different at all. Sorry, go actors.
We know as an actor, when you're on stage, you have a lot of different things you can rely on, like you were saying, to get your point across. So now it's just like kind of having all your senses being stripped away and only being left with like, I don't know, the sense of smell or something. You gotta use that smell. That's the best, the best you can,
Well, it is funny though, like when you're moving between sound and visuals, there are a lot of things where it's like, yes, this joke can still work, without the visuals. Like it can still make sense, but it won't be as funny. And being able to like tell the difference between like, yes, it'll read, but it won't have the effect that it would if you were seeing it. And sometimes you can't know that until you try it. I think after we had our first rehearsal, I went through and cut a lot of things that like maybe might still make sense, but just wouldn't have the same impact without visuals. So it was just about hearing it out loud first, I think.
Yeah, I've been practicing with Chesley for making my own voiceover like demo with Audacity right before we got the information for this script. So, but like the level of like stuff that the microphone can pick up that maybe is like not intentional was also kind of stressful. So like the whole time we were recording, I was just watching the little like peak meter, like trying to make sure that like everything, all of this stuff that we had worked on in the rehearsal without the mic was still being able to be conveyed like through the recording. And like hearing it back, you know, was not like necessarily a luxury that we had when we were recording the actual things. Just like trusting that the work was like muscle memory at that point. It was kind of stressful, but I guess it turned out okay. So
it turned out great. I'm sorry it was stressful.
No, Zach,
but
you're amazing.
Nailed it.
But it worked. It worked.
Okay, so we are getting toward the end of our. Oh, was there one more thing?
Well, I was just gonna say I'm doing a voiceover heavy show for my Fringe Festival show.
Give it a plug, Ben.
So thank you. It's called The Opinions of Men: A Stupid History of the Protestant Reformation. Jared is in it playing Martin Luther, famous reformer. A couple other Brianna and Malia are also in it as well. And one of the things Tess was saying about how you pick up things in the background recording, there was one where I heard somebody put down a plate in the background, right in the middle of the recording. I couldn't cut it out. And the cool thing about animation is, because it's an animated play, I just had a character put down a plate at that point. And I was like, all right, done. And it worked. So, you know, you work with what you can. So it just reminded me of that.
That's fantastic. I'm glad that you get to have little workarounds in animation.
Just like draw a cheat.
Okay, if anybody has anything else to say, now's the time before I go into the closing credits. Okay, I would like to thank all of you for being here today. Jared, Ryan Chavez, Sean, Tess, Ben, and I would also like to thank Associate Artistic Director Tamara Winters for directing this play. I would also like to thank Kayla Williams for the graphic design, also Doug Borntrager for the sound design, Megan Winter, who stage managed this show and also is doing tech right now, and the whole No staff, including Liz Carmen, Maggie Lou Rader, Jackson Short, Henry Bateman, and our executive producer and artistic director, Andrew Hungerford. Coming up next on the No Theater page live streams, we have Projection Connections from Doug Borntrager. Whoa, that was close. Doug Borntrager, and he's going to be going into Westwood tonight, and you can catch his map on the Projection Connections page. Thank you, everybody. Good night. Don't forget to buy this play and listen to it.
No, thank you for watching.
No, thank you for watching.
No, thank you for watching.
Oh.